Today we're reading The Little Prince. Have you ever found yourself lying awake in the middle of the night, staring at the ceiling, asking yourself, why is it so hard to feel happy now that I'm grown up? Why do the things I once treasured feel a little silly now? It's because the eyes you used to see the world have been slowly covered in a layer of dust. Dust made of numbers and rules and obligations. Only one person would look at the box you drew and say, look, the sheep inside is asleep. Only one person still remembers that the things that truly matter are invisible to the eye. So tonight, let's gently push open that sealed door to our childhood hearts, fly across an endless desert and go meet a golden-haired little prince, and let him teach us, through silence and a soft smile, everything there is to know about love and responsibility, about losing and holding on, about life and what it all means. This book, written for all the adults who were once children, is Antoine de Saint-Exupéry's The Little Prince. Before we meet the Little Prince himself, we need to meet the man who created him. Saint-Exupéry was not your conventional writer sitting quietly at a desk. He was first and foremost a pilot, an adventurer who kept company with stars and storms at 10,000 meters above the Earth. Picture him in the early 20th century, guiding a primitive aircraft over the Sahara Desert, with nothing below but dunes as silent and barren as the surface of the moon. He survived plane crashes. He came close to dying of thirst in the desert. He was rescued by what felt like a miracle. Most of his writing was done between flights, which is why his words carry the vastness of high altitude, the solitude of open desert, and a deep overhead view of the human condition. He wrote The Little Prince in 1942, in the middle of the Second World War, while the world was drowning in a kind of senseless chaos. He was living in exile in America, filled with longing for his homeland of France, and deeply alienated by the adult world's worship of power, possession, and numbers. It was out of this double crisis, personal and historical, that The Little Prince was born. You could say this book is a fairy tale on the outside, and an act of the most serious philosophical reflection on the inside. It is the question a grown man asks of himself, and of all the lost adults around him, after witnessing the world go mad. The most gentle question, and the sharpest. His motivation for writing it came from a kind of homesickness, not for a place on any map, but for a spiritual home, for the pure and honest heart that gets left behind, somewhere along the way to adulthood. The story of The Little Prince reads like a prose poem. There is no complicated plot, only metaphor layered on metaphor, and philosophy woven into every quiet moment. We follow the perspective of the narrator, a pilot whose plane breaks down and forces him to land in the Sahara Desert. He is completely alone, with only enough drinking water for 8 days, facing the most immediate and unforgiving kind of survival crisis. And then, just as he is bent over his engine in desperate concentration, a small, clear voice rises behind him. "Please, draw me a sheep." That is the Little Prince. Like an angel, he appears out of nowhere in the shadow of death. The stunned pilot, reaching back into his childhood, draws what he used to draw as a boy, a boa constrictor that had swallowed an elephant. And here is where something extraordinary happens. The child sees it immediately. He says, No, I don't want a boa constrictor that swallowed an elephant. I want a sheep." This is the meeting of two pure souls recognizing each other. In the middle of a desert that represents all the hopelessness of the adult world, a child recognizes the buried child inside another person. The exhausted pilot draws several attempts at a sheep, none satisfying, until finally he draws a box and says, "The sheep is inside." The Little Prince peers at it with delight and says, "The sheep is sleeping." Exactly right. Then he asks about the plane. The pilot says it's broken, it won't fly. And the Little Prince immediately catches something the pilot never intended. His eyes go wide and he says, "Oh, so you fell from the sky. Which star do you come from? Do you see the difference?" The adult thinks about horsepower and mechanical failure and survival. The child thinks about poetry, about origin, about the story behind the story. In the conversations that follow, the pilot slowly learns that the Little Prince comes from a very small planet, Asteroid B612, so small that simply moving his chair a few steps lets him watch a sunset whenever he wants. And one day he says, "I watched 44 sunsets." Then, Very quietly, he adds, "You know, when someone is very sad, they love to watch the sunset." In those few words lives an ocean of loneliness that no one else was listening to. The story opens with these two worlds wound together, the adult survival crisis and the child's heartache, and tells us from the very beginning that even in the most desperate places, tenderness and innocence can still be a form of salvation. Before he arrived on Earth, the little prince made a journey through space, visiting 6 nearby planets, each home to a very different and very recognizable adult. The first planet held a king in a magnificent purple robe who ruled over an empty universe. His greatest joy was giving commands. He ordered the stars to twinkle. He ordered the sunset to appear. He lived inside a self-deceiving fantasy of power. He represents our obsession with authority and the vanity of control. The second planet held a conceited man who wore a strange hat and did nothing but demand that the little prince admire him, applaud him, worship him. He existed entirely inside the approval of others, desperate to be seen as the most handsome, the most intelligent, the most magnificent being in the universe. He represents the hunger for fame and the inflation of the ego. The third planet held a drunkard surrounded by empty bottles, drinking without stopping. The little prince asked him why. He said sadly, to forget. To forget what? To forget my shame. And what are you ashamed of? Ashamed that I drink. A heartbreaking circle with no exit. He represents the soul that has sunk into escape and numbness. The fourth planet held a businessman who never looked up from his counting. He was counting the stars and writing them down in a ledger, claiming to own them. The little prince asked him what he did with the stars he owned. He said he put them in a bank. The little prince said, "I own a flower that I water every day. I own 3 volcanoes that I sweep every week. I am useful to them." The businessman could not understand a word of it. He represents the addiction to wealth and the confusion of possession with meaning. The fifth planet held a lamplighter whose tiny world spun so fast that he had to light and extinguish his lamp once every minute, following an order that had long since become obsolete. He was exhausted, without a single second of rest, faithfully executing a rule that made no sense anymore. The little prince thought he was the only one of the 6 who was not completely ridiculous, because at least the lamplighter's work was for something other than himself. He represents the person of duty who has become lost inside rigid systems and forgotten the original purpose. The 6th planet held a geographer of vast learning who had never once left his study. He recorded mountains and rivers and oceans, only eternal things. A flower, he told the little prince, was not worth recording because flowers are ephemeral. This cut the little prince to the bone. He suddenly thought of his rose. This tour through the small planets is the little prince's systematic field study of the adult world. He finds that every adult is extraordinarily busy, but none of them knows why. They are all obsessed with labels, power, wealth, knowledge, prestige, and have completely forgotten how to feel alive. They have lost the ability to experience joy or beauty and have become profoundly lonely in the process. All of this sets the stage for what he is about to learn. About his rose, about what it means to tame, and about the only kind of love worth having. Carrying his disappointment and confusion, the little prince finally reaches Earth, landing in the Sahara Desert. The first creature he meets is a snake, who says to him, in that mysterious and dangerous way, "I can send you back to where you came from, faster than any ship." This is Death's first introduction. The little prince walks on. He crosses mountains and fields without meeting any people. Then he finds a garden, and inside it, 5,000 roses blooming, every single one identical to his own rose. He stops dead. He begins to cry. He had believed his rose was unique in all the universe, and here before him, that belief appears to shatter. He lies down in the grass, feeling all his pride dissolve into nothing, and then the fox appears. The fox asks the little prince to tame him. The little prince doesn't understand. The fox explains, "To tame means to create a bond. Right now, you are just a little boy to me, like 100,000 other little boys. I don't need you, and you don't need me. But if you tame me, we will need each other. You will be unique in all the world to me. I will be unique in all the world to you." This is a world-opening answer. The fox teaches the little prince about the importance of ritual, about the investment of time. He says, It would be better if you come at the same time every day. If you come at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I will begin to feel happy by 3. As the hour approaches, I will feel happier and happier. By 4 o'clock, I won't be able to sit still. And that is the price of happiness. The little prince tames the fox. When the time comes to leave, the fox weeps. The little prince says, "This is your fault. I never wanted to make you sad." The fox says, "Yes, I will cry. But it was worth it, because now when I see golden wheat, I will think of your golden hair, and the whole world will be different because of you." Finally, before they part, the fox gives the little prince the secret that runs through the heart of this entire book. What is essential is invisible to the eye. It is the time you have spent on your rose that makes your rose so important. The little prince goes back to the garden of 5,000 roses. He looks at them and says, "You are beautiful, but you are empty. No one would die for you. My rose, a simple passerby would think she looks just like you, but she alone is more important than all of you together, because she is the one I watered. She is the one I put under a glass jar. She is the one I sheltered. She is my rose." And with this, the little prince completes something inside himself. He has understood that love is not about finding a perfect person. It is about taking responsibility for an imperfect one, the one with whom you have built something real. The scene in this story that carries the most weight, the one that quietly breaks open everything, is the farewell. On the 8th day in the desert, the little prince and the pilot find water, a well hidden deep in the desert. The water they draw from it tastes like a gift. It is sweet in a way that ordinary water is not, because they had to work to find it, because they shared the journey together. That water is love, friendship, understanding, everything the human spirit thirsts for in a dry and indifferent world. But it is also at this moment that the little prince knows it is time to go home. His body is too heavy to carry back. He must leave it behind and return to his planet, to his rose who needs him. In the dark of the desert night, under the stars, the little prince stands at the threshold of his departure and says to the pilot, "Sit down here, a little away from me. Don't say anything. Language is the source of misunderstanding. But I will be responsible for her. She is so fragile. She has only 4 thorns to defend herself against the whole world." Then he says, "When you look up at the sky at night, since I live on one of those stars, since I am laughing on one of them, for you, it will be as if all the stars are laughing. You will have stars that can laugh. It will be like giving you a great many little bells that know how to laugh." Then a flash of yellow light grazed his ankle. He fell as gently as a tree falls, slowly without a sound. The next morning, his body was gone. There is no wailing in this farewell, no dramatic speech, only the most extreme tenderness and restraint. And underneath it, a force that tears straight through. It is about responsibility. It is about keeping watch. It is about a connection between souls that does not require a body to survive. The little prince taught us, through his leaving, what it truly means to possess something. He became the stars. He became the laughter in the night sky, there forever, for anyone who knows how to look with their heart instead of their eyes. The story of the little prince is finished, but what he leaves behind will echo inside us for the rest of our lives. What is he really telling us? The first thing is about seeing and blindness. We have grown so accustomed to measuring everything by its price, evaluating relationships by their efficiency, defining success by numbers. We can see houses and stocks and status symbols, but we cannot see the sheep inside the box. We cannot see the smile of the stars. We cannot see the rose that became extraordinary simply because someone loved it enough. Saint-Exupéry speaks through the little prince and the fox to remind us that what is essential is invisible to the eye. Love, friendship, responsibility, beauty, poetry, everything that gives life its texture and depth, none of it can be seen. All of it must be felt. The second thing is about connection and the courage to build it. In the modern world, we are afraid of deep relationships because they mean responsibility and tears and the risk of loss. We prefer connections that don't ask too much of us. But the fox's philosophy is this: it is precisely the time you have spent on your rose that makes your rose matter. To tame something is to create a bond that is unlike any other in the world. To pour ordinary moments into something until it becomes extraordinary. whether it is a person you love, a friendship you tend, a vocation you give yourself to. The source of its value is always the time and feeling and care you poured into it. The tears that come with taming are the price, but they also mean that every moment of happiness you've shared has been made eternal. The third thing is about responsibility and what love actually is. The Little Prince comes to understand that love is not a feeling, it is an act. It is the unwavering commitment that says, I am responsible for her. His rose is proud and vain and fragile, full of imperfections. But she is his rose, and so he must go back and protect her. This overturns everything we usually say about love, that we love things because they are lovable. The Little Prince tells us something truer. It is because we have loved something that it becomes lovable. Responsibility is not the cage of love. It is the completion of it. The fourth thing is about what it means to be an adult. And this book is clear that adult is not about age. It is about a condition of the soul. It is what happens when a person has been so shaped by numbers, power, the hunger for possession, and rigid rules that they have lost their ability to imagine or feel. Every one of us once had a little prince living inside us. Most of us simply forgot he was there somewhere along the way. This book is a gentle awakening. It reminds us that every grown-up was once a child, and only a very few of them remember. Growing up should not mean becoming cynical and numb. It should mean understanding the full complexity of the world and choosing, in spite of all of it, to protect the part of yourself that is still pure, still poetic, still honest. At its deepest level, The Little Prince is a prophecy about what it means to live from the truest part of yourself. It asks us to pursue the distant horizon without forgetting why we set out, to chase success without abandoning the things that have no utility but carry all the beauty, to build relationships not as transactions but as acts of taming, with patience, with sacrifice, with the willingness to cry. Against the randomness of fate and the absurdity of the world, perhaps the most powerful thing we carry is the sincerity of the child that still lives somewhere inside us, the one that has never entirely disappeared. Dear friend, the night has grown late. Outside your window, the world may still be rushing past, or it may have finally gone quiet. But please, lift your eyes. Try to look at the sky. Even if the city lights leave you with only 1 or 2 visible stars, remember, somewhere on one of those stars lives a little prince with golden hair who loves to watch sunsets, and who tends carefully to a rose he has promised to protect. Because of him, the night sky is no longer just an astronomical phenomenon. It becomes a vast and tender metaphor. It asks us to look honestly at ourselves. In all our daily rushing, have we become the businessman interested only in numbers? The conceited man waiting for someone to applaud? The drunkard drinking to forget? When did we last sit quietly and draw a sheep? When did we last stop to watch a flower open? When did we last choose to tame a relationship? To invest the kind of time and tears that make something truly irreplaceable? So now, before you drift into sleep, let me leave the Little Prince's final question gently on your pillow. For you, what is your rose? What is the one thing, the one person, the one connection in your life that you are willing to spend your time on, to take responsibility for, to tend and protect? The one that makes you feel as though the entire night sky is different because of it.
See you next episode.